themes. Very much noted the President's pride in his Irish ancestry and his family accompanying him and being part of that on this personal visit as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, this has been a trip of two parts essentially. There's been the personal and there's been the political, and we've seen essentially what has turned out to be somewhat of a mix of that today. You know, it's had the formalised structures of the meetings with President Higgins, with Leo Varadkar now going into Oireachtas. But those relationships earlier today, those meetings earlier today very much showed relationships that were much more relaxed, much more informal than you might have expected for such a formal, staged, choreographed event. So there's an element of that even in these most formal aspects of his visit that are still very much speaking to his own personal interests and his want to be here and to be engaging with Ireland.
I see just to the right of the screen the Ukrainian flag has been raised at the Irish Parliament, and one of the former leaders to address this Parliament was President Zelensky himself. He did that remotely, but it was a significant day when he too expressed his appreciation for the support Ireland has given to his country while they've been at war, and we believe that will be a central theme of this speech this afternoon as Joe Biden becomes the fourth US president to address a joint session of the Irish Parliament. And when that happens, it's always got to be considered a significant day.
And what will be the protocol once the President makes his way into Leinster House? Presumably he'll be introduced, there'll be a speech before his.
Right on cue. I see the Speaker is waiting to greet him, and I think that is the protocol. It is normally the case that it is the Speaker who does the greeting rather than the Prime Minister, the Taoiseach, although I did notice earlier that the Taoiseach had not yet taken his seat in the chamber. But of course, he has himself had a rather busy afternoon having a meeting with the President to discuss Northern Ireland and Ukraine and various other issues as well. Perhaps by now Leo Varadkar has been whisked across from Farmley House and made his way into the building, but the Speaker will be the person who greets the President, who escorts him into the Dáil Éireann and who formally welcomes him and any other visitors who are there. And the Speaker, Sean O'Fargill, can be quite humorous at times, so I think we'll hear a fairly humorous introduction this afternoon.
And that door opens. And that is the door as the President arrives formally at Leinster House. David, did you say that's the Speaker there that we're seeing at the moment?
Yes, the man to the left of the screen is the Speaker, or the Concordia in the Irish language, and he will be the man who now escorts the President into the building after some warm words of welcome, I'm sure, and he will formally address the House first, welcoming
Let's see if we can listen in.
All right. You're going to say hello to the guys? I should see you. I'm looking forward to it. Okay.
Okay. Will we come in?
Come up there. They're all watching us.
All right.
Okay, so President Biden now making his way into Leinster House. Some waves for the crowd. He's such a seemingly a people person, and that's why he's running behind schedule. There's always a minute to spare for waiting crowds to talk, to wave and to interact. Oh, he's been locked out temporarily. We weren't expecting that. He's had the doors closed on him. I think he's found that quite funny also.
And that's not the traditional Céad Míle Fáilte, 100,000 welcomes that you get when you come to Dublin, but these things happen if you need to take a picture. Posterity, and I suppose the Irish Parliament doesn't get this opportunity very often, so they're going to make the most of it and make sure they have a picture for the album in the years to come.
Indeed, but the doors have now reopened and the delegation making their way in, led by President Biden, the fourth American president to address the joint session of the Irish Parliament. Now, we did say they were due to start at 5:15, but running late, a minute late at the moment, but I suspect it'll be much longer than that. Tell us who we can see inside the Parliament at the moment, David.
Well, parties, as happens in every parliament, will sit in their various designations. This Parliament is led by a coalition government of Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil, who were really in opposition for a very, very long time. The two largest parties have come together. It's not exactly an accurate comparison, but it would be similar to the Tories and the Labour Party forming a coalition government in some ways. That was a great surprise to people that they did that following the last election, and they simply did it because if they had not done it, Sinn Féin would be the party of government. Mary Lou McDonald would have assumed the office of Taoiseach because they did incredibly well in the last election, and I have to say are doing incredibly well in the polls right now, and many people are suggesting that Mary Lou McDonald could yet become the first female Taoiseach, the first Sinn Féin Taoiseach, and that would be significant given that there is a Sinn Féin First Minister designate in Northern Ireland. You would have Sinn Féin holding the highest office on both sides of the Irish border at the same time. So you're looking at Fine Gael on one side, quite close beside them, Fianna Fáil, and then on the opposite side of the House, Sinn Féin. Now, Gerry Adams, who led Sinn Féin prior to Mary Lou McDonald for 35 years, the man who persuaded the IRA to call it ceasefire, the man who persuaded the Republican movement to endorse the Good Friday Agreement, to move away from violence and to pursue their objective politically. He's no longer a member of this House, but he is in attendance this afternoon as a guest, and that's because of the role he played in the peace process, as indeed the other leaders of the four of the five main parties in Northern Ireland. Bit of a tongue twister, that. But they're here also to recognise the contribution those respective parties have made to the